"You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:32. But what if the truth is far darker and more unsettling than you ever imagined? What if the God that millions worship as the Almighty Creator, the so-called God of love and justice in the Bible, is not who he claims to be? What if Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, isn't the benevolent shepherd guiding his flock, but something far more sinister, a tyrannical, vengeful entity masquerading as the divine, perhaps even the devil in disguise? This isn't some wild conspiracy or clickbait theory. This is about contradictions, shocking verses, and ancient texts buried, burned, or silenced for over 1,000 years. Texts that tell a story so unexpected, so dark, that it could make you question everything you've ever believed. Yahweh in the Old Testament, a God of love or a God of war? In the Old Testament, Yahweh is described as a jealous God, Exodus 34:14, one who demands absolute obedience, exclusive worship, and quite often, blood. For many, Yahweh is the ultimate embodiment of love and justice. But when you carefully examine the text without the lens of unquestioning faith, another picture begins to emerge. Take Exodus 32:28, for example. After the Israelites create a golden calf, Yahweh orders Moses to punish them. Moses commands the Levites to kill your own people, brothers, neighbors, friends, it doesn't matter. 3,000 Israelites are massacred, not by enemies but by their own kin, under Yahweh's command. Or consider Numbers 31:17 through 18, where Yahweh instructs the Israelites to destroy the Midianites, saying, "Now kill all the boys and every woman who has slept with a man, but save for yourselves every virgin." Let that sink in. Yahweh not only orders genocide, but explicitly commands the capture of young girls for the soldiers. And then there's 1 Samuel 15:3, where Yahweh says to Saul, "Now go and strike down Amalek. Destroy everything they have. Do not spare them. Kill men, women, children, infants, oxen, sheep, camels, and donkeys." Infants, innocent lives, are wiped out at Yahweh's decree. Now ask yourself, if Yahweh is truly a God of love, mercy, and justice, why does he act like a vengeful warlord? Why does he demand innocent blood? And why does no one question it? The Gnostics and the hidden truth. In the 2nd century CE, a group of early Christians known as the Gnostics did begin asking these very questions, and their answers were as radical as they were shocking. Yahweh is not the true God. Yahweh is the demiurge. According to the Gnostics, the demiurge is a false god, a jealous and malevolent being who created the material world as a prison for our souls. The true God, they believed, is a being of pure light and love, existing beyond the physical universe. In the Gnostic text, the Apocryphon of John, Yahweh declares, "I am God, and there is no other." But to the Gnostics, this wasn't a statement of divine authority. It was a lie born of arrogance. Yahweh wasn't the supreme being. He was an impostor, a jailer, a tyrant, pretending to be God in order to enslave humanity. Did Jesus know the truth? Here's where things get even more disturbing. What if Jesus himself hinted at this truth? In John 44, Jesus tells the Pharisees, religious leaders who followed Yahweh's laws, "You belong to your father, the devil." Think about that. Jesus wasn't merely insulting them. He was pointing to something much bigger. While Yahweh demanded blood, Jesus preached love and mercy. While Yahweh called for war, Jesus taught forgiveness. Their messages couldn't be more opposed. The early Gnostic Christians noticed this stark contrast. They believed that Yahweh was the deceiver, the ruler of this fallen world, the devil, in disguise. And they believed Jesus came not to serve Yahweh, but to liberate humanity from him. A dark secret unearthed. We live in a different era now. The ancient texts that were silenced for centuries have resurfaced. The contradictions are clear, and the questions they raise are impossible to ignore. If Yahweh's actions resemble those of a tyrant, demanding blood, spreading fear, punishing disobedience, then is he truly God? Or is he something entirely different? But to the Gnostics, the serpent wasn't the villain. The serpent was the liberator, telling humanity the truth. Eat this, and your eyes will be opened. You will be like gods. And what happened? Adam and Eve didn't die. They awakened. They saw the truth, and Yahweh punished them for it. So the question remains, who is Yahweh really? A pattern of cruelty and control. Yahweh's actions throughout the Old Testament reveal a disturbing pattern. He doesn't guide humanity with love, but rules with fear and bloodshed. He demands obedience and punishes rebellion with merciless cruelty. In Genesis 6, for example, Yahweh is disappointed with humanity. His solution? Not to teach or forgive, but to wipe out nearly all life on earth with a flood. He drowns the entire planet, men, women, children, and animals. Imagine the terror, the screams, families desperately trying to survive as the waters rise. Or take Leviticus 10, where Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, offer unauthorized fire in the temple. Yahweh's response: immediate death by divine fire, without warning or second chances. In 2 Samuel 6, Uzzah touches the Ark of the Covenant to prevent it from falling. His reward: Yahweh strikes him dead on the spot. These are not the actions of a loving God, but of a deity who values power over people, obedience over understanding. Jesus versus Yahweh. The message of Jesus contrasts sharply with Yahweh's. In the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, 'Eye for eye and tooth for tooth.' But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth is Yahweh's law, straight from the Old Testament. But Jesus rejects it entirely, replacing it with a message of radical love and forgiveness. In John 8, when the Pharisees bring Jesus a woman caught in adultery, citing Yahweh's law that she should be stoned, Jesus ignores that law. He says, "Let the one who is without sin cast the first stone." One by one, the accusers leave, and Jesus tells the woman, "Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." Jesus doesn't just save the woman. He exposes the cruelty of Yahweh's laws and offers an alternative grounded in compassion. Was Yahweh ever God? If Jesus came to reveal the true God, then who was Yahweh? The Father of Jesus doesn't demand sacrifices, doesn't command genocides, doesn't drown the world in wrath. The Father of Jesus is described as light, love, and spirit. Yahweh, on the other hand, is a jealous warlord who declares, "I kill and I make alive, I wound and I heal." Deuteronomy 32:39. Even Jesus hints at a fundamental difference. He says in John 18:36, "My kingdom is not of this world, but Yahweh's kingdom is. He created this world, ruled over it, and demanded worship from its inhabitants." The Gnostics believed Yahweh wasn't God, but a being consumed by arrogance and pride, a demiurge who wanted to be God, but could never truly be divine. Judas, traitor or chosen disciple. Now consider this: what if Judas Iscariot wasn't a traitor but a chosen disciple on a secret mission? What if his so-called betrayal was the key to liberating Jesus and humanity from Yahweh's control? The Gospel of Judas a Gnostic text discovered in the 1970s, reveals an entirely different story. Judas wasn't acting out of greed or malice. He was following orders from Jesus himself. In the text, Jesus tells Judas, "You will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man that clothes me." This suggests that Judas didn't betray Jesus. He helped fulfill his mission. For the Gnostics, the crucifixion wasn't a tragedy. It was the ultimate liberation. Jesus didn't come to save the body, which was seen as a prison created by Yahweh. He came to free the divine spark within us and return to the true God beyond this material world. The most dangerous truth. For centuries, the Church has suppressed this truth. They vilified Judas, erased Gnostic texts, and buried the idea that Yahweh might not be God. But as these ancient stories resurface, the cracks in the traditional narrative become impossible to ignore. The question remains, was Jesus sent by Yahweh, or was he sent to liberate us from him? The answer could change everything.